Nas Daily is still posting videos, but ever since his expose, he's lost all support on basically every platform. His uploads now struggle to reach even a fraction of his fan base, and the only thing left bringing him views is people laughing at how badly he has fallen off. But it wasn't always like this. Just a few years earlier, Nas Daily was nowhere near one of the internet's most controversial creators. Instead, he was one of the most inspiring. After graduating from Harvard and landing a high-paying job as a software engineer, Nas made a decision that completely changed his life. Rather than climbing the corporate ladder, he quit his job and challenged himself to upload one video online every single day for the next 1,000 days. The idea was simple: travel the world, meet interesting people, and tell stories that millions had never heard before.
So he went to his childhood lake and dropped a ton of his solution, treated it with biofilters, nanotechnology, and crazy biology, and after a few months, he was able to transform the lake from this to this.
The formula worked almost immediately. His 1-minute documentaries stood out from everything else on YouTube. Instead of chasing drama or controversy, Nas introduced viewers to different cultures, unique traditions, and incredible people from every corner of the world, such as the real-life Tarzan.
This guy has a life many people can only dream of. He spends a lot of his time dancing, making music, climbing, swimming, growing his organic food, and growing his hair.
Or a kid making teddy bears for not-so-fortunate people.
So he taught himself how to make teddy bears from scratch, to send them to people around the world who could use a bit of support anywhere in the world.
Within just a few years, he'd built one of the biggest storytelling brands on the internet. Millions of people saw his videos every day. Tens of millions followed him across social media, and companies all around the world wanted to work with him. But more importantly, people trusted him. They believed that when Nas traveled somewhere, he was there to tell someone's story and not to sell them something. And that trust became the foundation of everything he'd built. Although, unfortunately for Nas Daily, it wouldn't last. By the end of his 1,000-day challenge, Nas Daily had become one of the biggest storytellers on the internet. He had amassed 14 million subscribers, 22 million followers on Facebook, and another 5 million on Instagram. At his peak, it felt almost impossible to open Facebook or YouTube without seeing one of his videos. What had started as a simple challenge had grown into a massive media company. But as his audience grew, so did his ambitions. Rather than simply telling inspiring stories, Nas created Nas Academy, an online platform where the people featured in his videos could sell educational courses to his audience. On paper, it seemed like the perfect next step. After all, who better to learn from than the people in Nas's own videos? Instead of just introducing viewers to remarkable people, he could help them learn directly from them. But it also created a problem. For the first time, the line between storytelling and business started to blur. Viewers who had always believed Nas traveled the world simply to share incredible stories began asking a different question. Were the people in his videos there because they had stories worth telling, or because they had something to sell? And in 2021, millions of people thought they'd finally found the answer. Because that same year, Nas traveled to the Philippines to film Whang-Od, the world's oldest traditional tattoo artist and one of the country's most respected cultural figures.
There is a woman who is 103 years old. She is the oldest tattoo artist in the world. And she doesn't use a tattoo machine, and she doesn't let you choose your own tattoo.
The video was exactly what viewers had come to expect from Nas Daily. He introduced millions of people to an ancient tattooing tradition that had been passed down through generations, shining a spotlight on a culture that most of the world had never seen before. At first, people loved it. But after reading the video's description, viewers noticed something they hadn't expected. Alongside the documentary was a link promoting a Whang-Od course on Nas Academy. Suddenly, what looked like another inspiring documentary felt like something else entirely. Instead of simply telling Whang-Od's story, Nas was now selling it. Just days later, Whang-Od's family publicly accused Nas Academy of using her name and cultural legacy without her informed consent, insisting she had never agreed to teach an online course. The allegation spread rapidly across social media, with the hashtag #UnfollowNasDaily beginning to trend throughout the Philippines. Even the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples became involved, investigating whether the course had been created without the wider community's consent. Within just a few days, Nas had reportedly lost hundreds of thousands of Facebook followers, and for the first time in his career, millions of people began asking whether he was really telling stories to celebrate cultures or turning those cultures into products. But for many people, Whang-Od wasn't seen as a one-off mistake. It was the beginning of a pattern. Just weeks later, another Filipino creator came forward with allegations about her own experience working with Nas. Her name was Louise Mabulo, an environmental activist who had founded a project helping local farmers grow cacao trees instead of cutting down forest. Nas had originally reached out to feature her work in one of his documentaries. But according to Louise, the experience was nothing like she expected. In a lengthy statement posted online, she claimed Nas repeatedly mocked the local accent, questioned why Filipinos were so poor, and dismissed the farmers' stories as not clickable enough for his audience. According to Louise, Nas eventually abandoned the documentary altogether, believing the story simply wasn't entertaining enough to upload. The allegations spread quickly across social media, with many people seeing them as further proof that the inspiring image that Nas had built online didn't match the person behind the camera. Nas publicly denied many of Louise's claims, arguing that her project wasn't as legitimate as it appeared, and stating that's why the documentary was never released. But for a lot of viewers, that wasn't really the point. The criticism wasn't about whether the documentary should have been uploaded in the first place. Instead, it was about the comments Louise claimed he'd made while filming. And once again, many felt that Nas had answered the parts of the controversy that suited him, while avoiding the questions people actually wanted answered. By this point, public opinion had already begun to shift. Whether every allegation against Nas was true is still debated today, but one thing wasn't. For the first time in his career, millions of people had stopped assuming that Nas's intentions were good. And once that trust began to disappear, every new story came with a new question. Could Nas Daily still be believed? By now, many viewers no longer questioned whether Nas had good intentions. Instead, they asked something much bigger. Could they trust the stories he was telling? Because while his reputation was already beginning to crumble, Nas continued introducing his audience to remarkable people, successful entrepreneurs, visionary billionaires, and people he claimed were changing the world. But there was one problem. Some of those stories didn't age very well. One of the biggest examples came in 2021 when Nas uploaded a video praising cryptocurrency billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried. In the video, Nas described him as the most generous Bitcoin billionaire, highlighting his enormous wealth and his promise to give almost all of it away to charity.
Sam is 29 years old only, but Sam has $22 billion. and he wants to donate all of it to charity.
To most viewers, it looked like another classic Nas Daily story. An unconventional person doing extraordinary things. But just 1 year later, everything fell apart. FTX collapsed in one of the biggest financial scandals in modern history. Billions of dollars in customer funds vanished, and as a result, Sam was arrested, later convicted of fraud, and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Almost overnight, one of Nas's most inspiring success stories had become one of the internet's biggest scams. And for many viewers, it raised an uncomfortable question. However, it didn't end there. Just a month later, Nas uploaded another documentary celebrating Binance founder Changpeng Zhao, also known as CZ, calling him the most humble crypto billionaire.
He made over $60 billion, but his mom still called him stupid.
Once again, the video portrayed him as an inspiring entrepreneur, and once again, the story didn't last. CZ would later plead guilty to money laundering charges, step down as Binance's CEO, and serve time in prison. On their own, these videos could have been dismissed as bad luck. After all, nobody can predict the future. But by this point, many viewers were no longer willing to give Nas Daily the benefit of the doubt. Because around the same time, another interview began circulating online. One that completely changed how people viewed almost every Nas Daily video he'd ever made. The interview came from an appearance Nas made on the Silicon Valley Girl podcast in April 2022. During the interview, she asked him a question that most people had never really considered before. Were some of the people featured in his documentaries actually paying to be there?
Interesting. So sometimes the characters that are in your video are actually paid sponsorships.
Nas admitted that some of his videos were sponsored.
Sometimes, yes.
Do you say that in the video?
So it's actually like less than 3% of the content. And we do not say that.
But what caught people's attention wasn't the sponsorships themselves, it was what he said next.
Because, well, one, in the post, it's when we say thank you to XYZ, blah, blah, for making this possible. Two, it's like, we don't live in America. So you don't actually have to say it.
Oh, different rules.
When asked why those sponsorships weren't clearly disclosed, Nas explained that because he wasn't based in America, he didn't believe he had to. The interview quickly spread online, and for thousands who watched it, it completely changed the way they looked at his documentaries. Because if some of Nas's stories were actually paid promotions, how many others had they been looking at the wrong way? Up until this point, many people had assumed the crypto videos were simply bad judgment. But after the interview, some viewers began wondering whether business interest had influenced more of Nas's documentaries than they had realized. Suddenly, Nas's uploads that once felt like genuine recommendations felt more like potential advertisements. And when people look back at videos praising figures like Sam Bankman-Fried and CZ, they no longer saw unfortunate mistakes. They saw a creator whose audience could no longer tell the difference between a story and a sponsorship. Now, it wasn't just Nas's intentions that people questioned. It wasn't even the people he chose to feature. It was the stories themselves. Every new post was now met with skepticism, every recommendation came with suspicion, and every controversy made it harder for viewers to separate genuine storytelling from marketing. By now, Nas had responded to nearly every major controversy surrounding his name. Whether it was Whang-Od, Louise Mabulo, or the growing criticism surrounding his documentaries, he always had an explanation. He insisted he had been misunderstood, that important details had been left out, and that the internet had twisted the truth.
Of course, a lot of people got angry about this, Alex and Lisha, because it shows Nas Daily as the villain. It's the evil. Oh, they're very evil. So what is the context here?
But for everyone, those responses no longer rebuilt trust. They only reinforced the growing belief that Nas refused to take responsibility for the damage he'd caused. And as more controversies piled up, something else began to change down in the comment sections. Videos that once celebrated Nas's storytelling were now filled with criticism. Bro, 16,000 views with 486 likes. People are here to just throw tomatoes at you. Instead of trusting his documentaries, people searched for what he'd left out. Pack it up, bro. You ended years ago. His reputation had completely flipped. A post on Reddit reads, "What happened to Nas Daily? He barely gets 10,000 views in a day these days, despite having 13 million subscribers." Where the responses show how fans now feel about Nas. He relied a lot on clickbait. With clickbait, it only works for a while, then viewers become uninterested. He sucks ass. Does promotions without telling, inconsistent in his opinions, arrogant, fragile ego, piece of shit. Today Nas Daily is still uploading videos, but they're no longer reaching the audience they once did. Videos that once attracted millions of views now often struggle to reach a fraction of that. Across social media, people weren't sharing his videos anymore. They were sharing the controversies behind them. It's about the controversies, the apologies, the criticism, and how far his reputation has fallen.